We're coming close to, potentially a close to this little series of a look back and a retrospective look at previous Call of Duty titles, simply because we're already up to Advanced Warfare 2014, and with the next title entry into the franchise, that being Black Ops 3, being so played even to this day, it might not be that much more of a retrospective look as so much of a, hey, this is what's still happening to this day as it was years ago type of look when we get to that. But whether or not you guys want to see this continue on a little bit further throughout the, of course, games of Black Ops 3 Infinite Warfare and Modern Warfare Remastered, we're very close to that of the present day. Advanced Warfare, being the last title introduced by Sledgehammer, was released in 2014 and was a game that to this day holds a very strong place in some people's hearts, whether for good or bad, whether you love the title or you thought it should have never been associated with Call of Duty. But it was something that was there and does have a lot to talk about, both good and bad, of course, and then also how it plays today still if you were to go back in 2018 and take a look at this game that forever changed the landslide of how Call of Duty may look to not only players, but also the outside general public. Now, jumping into the promotion that we ended up seeing our first teases of Call of Duty Advanced Warfare back in, say, April, May of 2013, it was of course a massive change up from that of what we had previously known within Call of Duty. Fans of course were a little bit sour with Call of Duty Ghost at that point and were looking for anything to move on to, so reception, at least from what I remember, wasn't all that bad, but of course as the time progressed, people got a little bit upset with how it was, but regardless, no matter how you spin it, there's no denying that it was probably the most innovative Call of Duty title in the franchise, again, for better or for worse. Out of all of that comes some of the massive innovations to Call of Duty in, firstly, of course, the complete movement overhaul. That's, of course, the biggest one you'll probably notice right off the bat. It was the first time we ever left boots on the ground for Call of Duty and went to a little bit of an exo movement, something that had thrusters, something that allowed you to jump 3 times as high as you normally would in one thrust, let alone having 2 in one specific movement system, so you could move up and then over, and so therefore it changed drastically the pace of the game, the verticality of the game, and so much more that players were used to for the past decade. Now, this may have been directly a result of the decade-long, well, every single year is a copy and paste, everything is exactly the same, just a different setting, and so therefore, Sledgehammer was tasked with making the game different. Whether you enjoyed the byproduct of that or not, they did do just that. They made the game different, and from my time playing it, as somebody that at the time was just casual and played to play, it was a lot of fun. It was a breakaway, and of course, while that might, again, not be everyone's cup of tea, it was different. Now, in terms of other things that were innovative, customization was a complete overhaul on how that was released within Advanced Warfare. Firstly, one big thing that you jumped into in any sort of circumstance, even before you had anything unlocked, there was a full lobby preview in which you could see every single operator right there in one what looked to be like a simulation room. From there, you could see everybody's outfits, their weapons, their ranks, some of their stats even, and so from that, it was a massive breakaway that we saw later was actually the catalyst for why we have the headquarters in Call of Duty World War II. Additionally, operator customization, talking about that, you could customize the entire loadout, the full kit that your operator had on hand. So whether that be your character themselves, the helmet, the gloves, the exo, the chest plates, the shirts, the boots, the knee guards, the whole 9 yards was at your disposal, in which you could take a look at and change literally anything out that you wanted. And if you had something awesome you wanted to take a look at, maybe say afterwards, or you wanted to just take a look at everything else, the coolest part to me out of Advanced Warfare was that of the armory, which again, to this day, I think is the single greatest thing that we've ever seen in Call of Duty customization. It was a hub where you could see every single piece of equipment and weaponry that you had, and it was located right on your main menu. Plus, you could end up seeing that you had dupes, then you could end up burning those for XP, something that does return in Black Ops 3, but not in the sense of a visual representation. So you couldn't see your dupes in armory style in Black Ops 3. Honestly, the armory itself, once again, just the idea of it was something that I absolutely loved. I honestly really wish this would have returned in World War II, especially whenever we had the HQ. The headquarters is something that you have the quartermaster, the operations officer. It'd be such a perfect fit to have an ammunitions or an armory station. With emblems, the quartermaster, the gunsmith, and so on and so forth, it'd be insanely perfect. And not to mention that if the headquarters is the landing post for the front lines, oh man, do I wish that could have returned, man. That would have been so perfect. perfect. But unfortunately, it did not. The armory was only available in Advanced Warfare, and to this day, we have not seen anything of the likes return, but it was such an awesome innovation to customization overall, if you ask me. Then, probably one of the biggest innovations to the Call of Duty franchise, once again, for better or for worse, was that of weapon variants. No longer were there just base weapons. Weapon variants allowed for further depth and customization, but also sacrificed the level play in a sense. Each variant had different stats tied to the weapon, some with more damage, some with higher fire rates, some built-in attachments, but all were unique, which from a design perspective is absolutely awesome in pulling that off, but from a player perspective, it caused a break in how players see the word of fair. Each variant was available via supply drops, or some were tied to rank, but supply drops were a brand new introduction again to COD that gave customization loot, smaller items, and of course, also the ability for weapon variants to drop to players. All of which was RNG or luck-based, or in the sense of paid drops, created the legitimate pay-to-win argument, as some weapons were, though minor, still different and better than that of base weapons that people who would have not paid would have access to. Additionally, other innovations were the firing range, something that we first saw in Advanced Warfare, and we've seen a few variations between Infinite Warfare and COD World War II, but the firing range was a place you could go out, AI enemies that were stationary or mobile in some cases, but each individual window you could step into had a different design for the course that you would end up playing against. Then other things like Uplink was a brand new game mode that was available for that the first time we saw that as a result directly of the new movement system. The supply drop system, like we mentioned, was that of all RNG based, but it was an entire different argument in itself, an entire beast we could cover at length and almost an entire video, but it was an issue with weapon variants. Of course, it introduced the RNG system we see all the way up until today. And if you're looking at just the core of how the system works, there are worse evils in the franchise that we see with the supply drop system, and I'm looking directly at Black Ops 3 because you don't have specific DLC weapons only available via supply drops. You do have options, again, to buy some of them. The EM1 was one that was separately buyable, and also there were weapons that were dropped for free randomly and intermittently after Advanced Warfare's lifespan kind of ended and we moved into Black Ops 3. And the system itself, of course, rewarded you with a supply drop on a regular basis. It wasn't tied to rank, it was rather tied to playtime or some other thing like that. I don't know if it was ever actually deciphered, but you got them relatively frequently. You couldn't really save them up all that much. I think the most you could save up at one time was 3 before it stopped giving you them automatically, but the loot pool had items that were of course of customization but did have some value to them and weren't bogged down by, say, pistol grips or calling cards as much as they are today. But it was of course the introduction of the supply drop system, which I still wish we could get away from in Call of Duty in general. Other things include the Pick 13 system, a variation that of the Pick 10. Streak customization was a thing within Advanced Warfare where you could customize your streaks to have 3 abilities at most, but you didn't have to take 3, in which it would grant it a little bit higher of a score. Some were rather awesome, some, my personal favorite was that of just even this bare UAV, plus support directional detection and threat detection, which gave you a little bit more, of course, of an added bonus. And so that was the first time we got to see streak customization. The DLC system also finally rounding out the other cool things here with this, led to being the last buyable DLC system. Camos, character customization, even weapons, like we said, the EM1 was available as a standalone item for, I believe, $5.99. That was the last time we'd see that within Call of Duty. Black Ops 3 introduced a very, to put it lightly, unfair DLC system with those items we just mentioned, but these ones were the last ones you could physically buy. So as you can see, a ton of innovation in how the franchise itself shaped up, but if you were to go and play it right now, well, it's pretty much the same thing as we've seen previously with these other look backs. There are, of course, lower player counts. Advanced Warfare being on the current generation of consoles, that being Xbox One, PS4, and PC, does have the ability that it still is in the relative general vicinity of anybody that may have the disc lying around. They don't have to bring out their 360 or PlayStation 3, set that all up just to play a few games. And so in that sense, it automatically has a little bit higher of a player count because it is closer to recent, though of course there are not near as many as what we'd see on, say, Black Ops 3 or Call of Duty World War II. Still those bigger name ones that even today in 2018 are very relevant in the community, but there are some things that in other game modes you might not see all that many outside of, say, Domination, TDM, Ground War. Those are probably still the most populated. One thing though that is different about Advanced Warfare is that the first time we actually did not see player counts in terms of who all was online. So as it stands right now, we don't have any official real number to give you guys in comparison, and that's something that moving forward into the future of the titles as well, we won't have that either. But things like TDM, which is my go-to as always, those were very easy to play and easy to find games on. Sometimes you would come across a lobby that there was not a full lobby, but it would fill up in time, and after that, once those players were in that lobby, moving forward into other matches, you wouldn't have all that tough of a time with the player count. Servers were nice. This, I believe, was one of the first games to have a hybrid system, so you did not necessarily have to just depend on peer-to-peer connection. So if you were matched up randomly with somebody, say, on the East Coast to West Coast, it wouldn't necessarily drag your gameplay experience down. You'd end up, in most cases, jumping onto a more centralized server, which, even if it was the case of a West Coast versus an East Coast player, theoretically, you'd meet somewhere in the middle, and so therefore, not one person would be at a massive advantage and one at a disadvantage. It'd kind of be relatively both at a slightly poor connection, because if you take the distance in between and meet in the middle, you still have a very high ping to those servers. But in that sense, servers themselves aren't half bad. They're still, of course, supported, and with the current generation and the current hybrid system, whenever I was playing earlier in the day, I didn't notice all that much frame lag or jumping across the screen, other than what, of course, the exos allow you to do. Hit detection, in my mind, wasn't all that half bad. The one thing that, of course, I noticed was that the recoil was very relevant in the weaponry, but that was something that, with Advanced Warfare, that was always there. The recoil was, if you didn't have a grip, something you did have to combat naturally, so in that sense, hit detection may seem like it's off, but in reality, I was probably just missing my shots. So in that sense, it seemed okay and up to date still. And overall, the gameplay experience, if you can get past being on the boots on the ground for the past 8 months or so with World War II, and however long you may have stayed away from the other airborne titles in the Call of Duty franchise, it is still rather fun. The pace is very fast. It is something that does take a little bit getting used to if you have to go back to it, but you get the hang of it rather quickly. My second game on, I dropped the DNA bomb that you see in the background. And so in that sense, I picked up like a jiffy and like I never left, even coming from a complete different platform. So in that sense, it is still a lot of fun if you can get behind it. I again know that this game isn't necessarily everyone's cup of tea, and it might be way different than that of what you want to play, but if you have a little bit of time to spare and you want to try it out, again, it's not all that half bad, and of course, it's still in a great condition in terms of support and player count, say compared to the older titles, maybe even of COD 4. While that might rank higher in some people's power rankings, there might not be as many players to support the lobbies you're looking for. So in that sense, Advanced Warfare is pretty solid, and one thing that I honestly loved was that, honestly, even up until recently, Advanced Warfare was still supported. Probably about the past year or so, there obviously hasn't been support for it because World War II is that main title, but new weapons were dropped intermittently, and it was actually mentioned that before World War II was released, they were dropped intermittently because they wanted to gauge the idea of World War II and that particular era to kind of tease and also get the community reception of the weaponry they'd be using unknowingly at that point. So that said, it was really cool to see the support. It was the first title we saw outside of just that main year get supported after the launch of the next title, so it was really cool to see that, but that's ultimately where we are today. 2018, looking back, I think that honestly it was a great game, especially for the innovation that it brought, though it might not have been everybody's cup of tea like I mentioned. I know some people hated the flying around thing, some people thought it was cool, and it was actually that breakaway that we saw finally after 10 years of just boots on the ground rehashing everything. So in that sense, love it or hate it, it was probably, I think, the biggest innovation we had to a franchise since the original Call of Duty title, and for what it's worth, I thought it was a rather enjoyable game. So that said, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Did you guys like Advanced Warfare? Did you love it, hate it, whatever it may be? Feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, and would you guys be willing to go back and try this out for a little bit? Would you guys be willing to go back, jump on, play some games, or you guys not necessarily all that much into it? Whatever it may be though, hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you guys did, make sure to drop a like down below. If you guys want to see more of this stuff, and you want to see Black Ops 3, Infinite Warfare, and Modern Warfare Remastered, though they are, of course, the newest generation of Call of Duty titles, do you want to see more of these 2018 retrospective looks, or not so much? Should we call it here? I would honestly love to get your feedback on that one, so hopefully you guys enjoyed though. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new, and you guys are new to Call of Duty. Anything regarding Call of Duty World War II, and anything regarding the franchise, I guess. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing regarding Call of Duty content. And if you guys want to follow me over on Twitter, that's the best place to get cactus outside of YouTube, practically live on Twitter. So if you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, link is down there in the description below. And also, if you guys want to follow me over on Instagram, that link is as well in the description below. If you guys want to follow my life and pictures, down there for you guys to check out. That said, thank you guys all so much for watching. Mine's been Espresso. Hopefully you guys had a fantastic day. Take care, and peace.